All right, it's time for the Press Box Podcast once again. This will be episode 40. And this episode is the first of a few episodes that will be coming up about the Ultimate World Series champion. We'll discuss here after the intro music. Basically, we took 50 years of Major League Baseball, the past 50 years, and want to come up with the Ultimate World Series champion out of all the 50 champions. So without further ado, we'll get into that a little bit more and explain it right now on the Press Box Podcast.
Okay, thanks for listening to the Press Box Podcast. Hi, I'm your host, Ralph Miranda, along with my co-host, Joseph Miranda. And today we're going to start a series that we're really excited about. We're calling it the Champions Bracket World Series 1970 to 2019. What we've done here is we are looking at World Series champions from 1970 to 2019, and we've selected 8 teams from the National League. In other words, 8 teams that won the World Series and were National League teams, and 8 teams that won the World Series and were American League teams. We put them in each in their own half of the brackets, and we seeded them 1 through 8. And then we're going to go through those brackets. We're going to have 4 shows. The first round, obviously, would be the round of 16, and then the round of 8, the round of 4, and then the final championship round of 2. So what we did was myself, Joseph, our producer Nathan, we sat down and looked at all the World Series champions from 1970 to 2019, and we made our own personal assessment of which ones we thought should be in this bracket. And then we compared those 3 lists to see, 1, if all 3 of us had picked a team, 2, if maybe just 2 of us had. Obviously, if all 3 of us and this was done anonymously, we didn't talk about it. If all 3 of us picked one team, the same team, obviously that team should have been in there. And then if 2 of us picked it, we thought that should be in there. And then if there was any discussion after that, we kind of talked about the teams that were on the outside looking in. Obviously, it was pretty easy. We got through about 4 teams on each side of the bracket, which was pretty easy when you look at those teams over the last 50 years. And then the other 2 or 3 on each side, we kind of made our assessment based on what we thought about the competition, what their year was like, that sort of thing. We want you to be heavily interactive with this. We're going to have, as I said, there'll be 4 shows in this series, round of 16, round of 8, round of 4, and then the final round of 2. You're listening to this on a Monday. We're going to release this podcast. Each round will be on a Monday and a Thursday, so it's 2 weeks of this right now that you'll have these particular Press Box Podcast shows. We want you to go to our Twitter account at PressBoxPod. There will be a bracket there. Obviously, we can't show you a bracket when you're listening to a podcast, but at PressBoxPod on our Twitter account, we will have the actual bracket. So you'll see these teams that we're going to be talking about here today. You'll see them listed, you'll see their opposition, and you'll see their seed, which we'll go over again today. But you can follow that. And we want your interaction. I mean, did we pick the right teams? Are there teams that you thought we left out that should have been in there? And obviously, as we get down towards the final 2, especially the final 4, we'll get your input through an interactive poll as to who you think should be the winner. We think this is going to be really exciting. We're looking forward to it. And we're going to do it as well for the National Football League, for Super Bowl winners, and for the NBA basketball championship winners as well. So we're looking forward to it. We think during this time that we're all kind of sitting around not doing a whole lot, that this will be an exciting avenue for us to pursue. So hope I did a good job there of explaining what we're doing. Let me go over real quickly, and this would be a good time for you all as you're listening to check our Twitter account at PressBoxPod. And pull up the bracket. But first of all, we're looking at the National League. The National League bracket is as follows. Our number 1 seed in the National League, the team that we thought was the number 1 seed, was the 1975 Cincinnati Reds. They will be up against the number 8 seed, which we determined was the 1995 Braves. And I'll get into in a minute how we chose the seeding. The number 2 seed was the 1986 Mets, and they will be up against the number 7 seed, the 2008 Philadelphia Phillies. The number 3 seed was the 2016 Chicago Cubs. They will be facing off against the 2001 Arizona Diamondbacks, who were the number 6 seed. And then the number 4 seed was the 2012 San Francisco Giants, facing the 5th seed, the 2019 Washington Nationals. And of course, as you all know, that was the team that is the reigning World Series champion. Over in the American League, our number 1 seed was the 1998 Yankees. Our number 2 seed, the 98 Yankees will be facing off against the 8th seed, the 1974 Oakland Athletics. The number 2 seed was the 1970 Baltimore Orioles. They will be playing or facing up against the 1992 Toronto Blue Jays, who were the 7th seed. The number 3 seed was the 1984 Detroit Tigers. They will be taking on the number 6 seed, the 2004 Boston Red Sox. And then the number 4 seed is the 2009 New York Yankees, and they will be facing off against their brethren from an earlier era, the number 5 seed, the 1977 New York Yankees. Now, you may be wondering, how did we pick the seeds? How did we get those seeds? Well, after we decided which teams we thought should be in there, and I explained that process to you, we looked at the 8 teams on each side, and we looked at their regular season wins, and we based our seeding on that. So, obviously in the National League, the 1975 Reds won 108 games, the 1986 Mets won 108 games. So we just decided to go with the Reds based on, some statistics we looked at and just some overall performance during that season. So those were your 1 and 2. The Cubs of 2016 won 103 games, hence the 3rd seed. The Braves of the Giants of 2012 won 94. They were the 4th seed. The Nationals last year won 93. They were the 5th seed. The Diamondbacks won 92. They were the 6th seed. The Phillies of 2008 won 92 as the 7th seed. And then the Braves of 1995 won 90 games. Therefore, we picked them as the 8th seed. In the American League, the 98 Yankees won 114 games. They were the 1 seed. The 1970 Orioles won 108 games. They were the 2 seed. The 84 Tigers won 104 games. They were the 3 seed. The 2009 Yankees won 103 games. They were our 4th seed. The 97 Yankees won 100 games. They were the 5th seed. The 04 Red Sox won 98 games. They were 6. The 92 Blue Jays won 96. They were 7. And the 1974 A's won 90 games. They were the 8th seed. So that sets it up for you, and I think we're ready to go. So after that, Joseph, welcome again. Good to be with you here today.
Good to be back. This is exciting.
Well, we're looking forward to it. And Nathan, our producer, is going to join us. He's going to kind of set up our matchups for us and lead us into the discussion of that. So
I might have a few comments here and there.
Okay, well,
that's
good.
About it.
We want you to have some comments. All right, so Nathan, what's our first matchup that we'll be looking at today?
All right, so the first matchup is we'll start with the American League. It's the 1-seeded 1998 New York Yankees versus the 8-seed 1974 Oakland Athletics. And the 98 Yankees won 114 games, lost 48, finished first in the AL East. They swept the divisional series 3-0 over the Texas Rangers, beat the Cleveland Indians in the championship series 4-2, and then they swept the San Diego Padres in the World Series 4-0. The 74 Oakland Athletics won 90 games, lost 72, finished first in the AL West. There was no divisional series, I believe, back then. So they won the championship series 3-1 over the Baltimore Orioles, and then they won the World Series 4-1 over the Los Angeles Dodgers.
Okay, so we're ready to discuss. Joseph, why don't you get us started here?
All right. First off, the thing that stands out about the 98 Yankees is their 114 wins, second most all time.
Right.
Behind the 0-1 Mariners,
right,
who didn't win the World Series, but
we're beaten by the
right,
Yankees.
Right. I'll go ahead and start with this caveat that obviously some of these teams I didn't see play in person, like the 74 Athletics before my time, so you can speak a little more to that. But I do know that 74 A's was basically the culmination of their 72 through 74 run of World Series. Similar to the Yankees at that point, of course.
Right.
I guess this is kind of their start of their three-peat 98 and 2000, but they had one in 96. So kind of some similarities there in those matchups. Your thoughts?
No, I think that's excellent. I had never thought about that particular avenue. Was that you've got a matchup here with the '98 Yankees, who were basically just starting that little dynasty, right? They did win it in '96, but they were just starting their dynasty, and the '74 A's were kind of ending their dynasty, if you will. So that's interesting. An interesting way to look at it. Also, an interesting thing too, which I don't know if this matters or not, but Joe Torre was the manager of the Yankees. The A's of '74. Alvin Dark was their manager. Dick Williams had been their manager prior to that. So they had a new manager. I believe they won probably fewer games than they had won the previous 2 years. So that is interesting. Another thing is, I think I've always felt like it's a little harder when you have to win two series to get to the World Series as opposed to winning one series to get to the World Series. So I got to give the Yankees a little bit of an edge on that one. Yeah. So anyway.
Well, we'll start with the pitching matchups here.
Yeah, excellent.
Of course, we'll go. Obviously, these teams can make their own rotations in the postseason of who they want to start game 1 and 2. But so we won't go into that too deep. But you've got Andy Pettitte, David Wells, David Cohn, and either Hideki Irabu or Orlando Hernandez, El Duque, for the Yankees. And then you have Catfish Hunter, Vida Blue, Ken Holtzman, Dave Hamilton. For the A's. I think my initial impression is top to bottom, the Yankees pitching is a little better. But you got Catfish Hunter and Vida Blue, two big names at the top there.
Yes.
Catfish Hunter winning 25 games in '74.
Right.
Which you don't see much nowadays, partly because he probably pitched deeper into games and than they do nowadays. So it gives you opportunities for more wins. But I'm going to give the edge to the Yankees there. You've got Cohn and Wells, two guys that have thrown perfect games and always came up big for the Yankees in the postseason. And then Andy Pettitte, kind of the quintessential Yankees postseason pitcher. Pretty much always finds a way to give a good outing there. Thoughts on the pitching?
Yeah, no, that's an excellent point. Catfish Hunter was obviously, and again, this is something that I obviously lived through it, but that was right after that '74 season. The free agency began. That was kind of the start of free agency. Yeah. And Catfish Hunter was really the first official, if you want to say, big name free agent who went to the Yankees. Right. He ended up going to the Yankees. If you look at the '77 Yankees, which we're going to discuss a little bit later, you'll see Catfish Hunter on their roster as well. So Catfish Hunter was obviously the ace of their staff. Vida Blue was a very, very good pitcher. In fact, his big years were 1970, 1971. Yeah. He was pretty much lights out those years. He was a little bit, as you look at his record, there 17 and 15, 3.25 ERA. And then Ken Holtzman, good pitcher, not overpowering. But obviously Catfish Hunter is the guy that you want to start, if you can, 3 games of the World Series if you have to. They did have Raleigh Fingers, who was probably one of the best closers of his time. Yeah. But then the Yankees had Mariano Rivera, who's the greatest closer of all time. Arguably, according to his teammate, Alex Rodriguez, in later years.
Catfish Hunter was the Cy Young winner in '74.
Exactly.
Yeah. And as you mentioned, Vida Blue, I thought this was interesting. In '71, he was the Cy Young winner and he was the MVP.
Right.
The pitchers, they don't win MVPs that often.
Very seldom. Verlander, that's right. Very seldom. But as I said, those were his big years, 70, 71.
Well, you can make a case then, if this was a series, the A's could get up 2-0 with great outings by Catfish Hunter and Vida Blue.
They very well could.
Which could more likely they'd give a dominant performance, a shutdown performance, than maybe like Pettitte and Wells.
That's true. But I think here's the way, you're exactly right about that. And obviously, I guess we're assuming that this would be played at the home of the series would start in New York. Yeah. So and then if you look at the matchup, Catfish Hunter being a right-hander, the Yankee lineup has
6. Well,
quite a few right-handers.
6 out of 9.
Right, but they do have 3 left-handers and 2 switch hitters. So you're looking at basically 5 guys that could end up hitting from the left side of the plate if need be. Yeah. And then with Vida Blue being a left-hander, again, you've got
6 out of 9, right?
Yeah, exactly. So the Yankees have a little more flexibility than the A's do as far as moving guys from one side of the plate. If you look at the A's lineup, they're pretty heavily right-handed lineup. And then you got Andy Pettitte, David Wells. David Wells, who threw a perfect game in '98. Yeah. So I think the Yankees. I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that the A's would go up 2-0. I think with Catfish Hunter and Vida Blue coming out of the gate, I think they would need to go up 2-0. If they go 1-1, I think that's advantage Yankees.
Yeah. That's a good point, especially when you consider that it's starting in New York.
Correct.
touch on the lineups here. I think this stands out initially. The Yankees more of a powerful lineup.
Right.
You have guys with everybody in their
double-digit
home runs. In the A's, you've got 1, 2, 3, only 4 guys in double digits. Now those are all above 20, but still.
Right.
And it's different than the Yankees lineup. And then again, a lot more RBIs in the Yankees lineup too.
No one in the A's lineup hit over 300 that year either.
That's right.
Also correct.
Good point.
Yeah, I mean, the saying is good pitching beats good hitting,
right?
Especially in the playoffs. But I find it hard to believe that this Yankees lineup with Posada, Martinez, Jeter, Bernie Williams, then you got Paul O'Neill. They don't get to, one of the A stars in the first 2 games, and I see it more like a 1-1 through the first 2.
I agree with that. I think it would be 1-1, and then when you go back to Oakland for games 3, 4, and 5, I mean, you're looking at Ken Holtzman, Dave Hamilton, and possibly Catfish Hunter again. But with the Yankees, you got David Cohn, El Duque, who was a money pitcher in the playoffs, and then possibly back to Andy Pettit if you need him.
Yeah, I think that the 5th starters don't get used in this series.
Probably not. Yeah, but I think El Duque would move up. He was listed there as the 5th starter, but I think they would go with him over Hideki Irabu because El Duque is
and that's what I said at the start. I think top to bottom, the Yankees pitching throughout the series, you're going to have more quality star set of guys.
And then I think the wild card here is these are obviously going to be close ball games.
Yeah.
And the Yankees have Mariano Rivera.
Right.
And don't get me wrong, Raleigh Fingers, I've watched the guy pitch. He was a great closer, but he wasn't as dominant as Mariano Rivera, and I just think that gives the Yankees an advantage. And then also you look at the A's lineup. We talked about 4 guys who you would consider to be their power guys: Reggie Jackson, Joe Rudi, Sal Bando, and Gene Tennis. And I watched all 4 of those guys play, and they were extremely good hitters, powerful hitters. But when you got 4 guys like that you have to be careful with, you can pitch around guys like that, right? Yeah. You can bring in late innings, you can substitute pitchers if you need to face guys in that situation. Whereas, as you mentioned, the Yankee lineup, top to bottom, is a pretty consistent and powerful lineup. Yeah. I mean, you got guys like, Chad Curtis hit 10 home runs. Scott Brosius hit 19 home runs. Yeah. So I just think top to bottom, as you said, I think it'd be hard to beat this Yankee team 4 times.
I agree. Yeah, definitely agree. I mean, I think that you look at the '98 Padres, who were, they got to the World Series, they won the National League. They couldn't even win 1 game. So
and they weren't even close.
Tony Gwynn.
They had players too. So, the A's are going to give a better effort than that, I think. But I see probably a 4-2 Yankees win there.
I agree with that.
That's what I see. I don't know.
98 Padres won 98 games, almost 100. That was pretty
good. Yeah, I see this series playing out as you said. I see them splitting in New York. I see the Yankees taking 2 out of 3 in Oakland, and then coming back to Yankee Stadium and closing it out 4-2.
Yeah.
So
I have a quick question before we move on.
Sure.
I noticed the DH for the A's that year, Jesus Alou. Is that Moses Alou's father? Do you know?
No. Jesus Alou was one of the 3 brothers.
It could be his uncle. Felipe Alou's his father.
Yeah, Felipe Alou's his father.
He's related to Moses.
Yeah, there was 3 Alou brothers. In fact, a good trivia question is all 3 of them played in the outfield at the same time for I think it was the San Francisco Giants. Jesus, Felipe, and
Matty
Alou, right? All 3 of them. That's right. So yeah, Jesus Alou is his uncle.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, so we've decided the Yankees advance
on
that particular matchup.
All right, next matchup, we have in the AL, we have the 2-seeded 1970 Baltimore Orioles facing off against the 7-seed 1992 Toronto Blue Jays. Now, the 1970 Orioles won 108 games, lost 54, finished first in the AL East. Again, no divisional series back then, so they swept the championship series 3-0 over the Twins, and they took the World Series 4-1 over the Reds, so pretty dominant postseason. The 92 Blue Jays won 96 games, lost 66, first in the AL East. Again, no divisional series, so they took the championship series 4-2 over the Oakland Athletics, and they won the World Series 4-2 over the Atlanta Braves. So I guess we're just beginning their kind of 90s run of dominance.
Right.
So there you have it. You can delve in.
Okay, I guess I guess I'll start this one out. Let's. It's always good to start with the pitching matchups, as you said on the previous one we looked at it, and I think I mentioned this when we were deciding which teams to be in this thing. But you look at that Oriole pitching staff.
Yeah, three 20-game winners. Yeah.
It's hard. It's hard not to see right away that you had three guys win 20 games, over 20 games. Jim Palmer won only 20, but he had a 2.71 ERA. Mike Cuellar and Dave McNally won 24 each. Pretty dominant, pretty dominant pitching staff. You look at the Blue Jays pitching staff. Jack Morris was a guy that had come over from the Twins. That's right. He was the guy that pitched 10 innings the previous year in the World Series against the Braves, and then comes over and goes 21-6 for the Blue Jays. But outside of him, you don't see anybody that really jumps out at you. I mean, Juan Guzman had a good ERA, only won 16 games. Jimmy Key, 13-13. But again, let's also put into perspective, the 92 Blue Jays were in that era that was, you still had, starting pitchers didn't go very deep into games. That was kind of the beginning of the era of a lot of substitution. The 70 Orioles, you didn't have a lot of that. Of course, they didn't need to with their staff. So obviously right out of the gate, I got to give the advantage to the Oriole pitching staff.
I agree. Kind of looking at like we did last matchup of the series here. I mean, the Orioles could conceivably go 3-0 on the back of that pitching staff.
Yes,
I mean,
easily.
24-game winner, 24-game winner, and 20-game winner. In that season, like you said, I think that is outmatched the Blue Jays starters. Not saying that the Blue Jays couldn't get a win in there somewhere, but when you just look at that, it makes quite a big difference there. Now, as far as closers go, Tom Hinkie for the Blue Jays 92 had 34 saves as opposed to
13 for the
13 for the Orioles. Pete
Reichert. Yeah.
Reichert.
Yeah.
Okay.
Of course,
go ahead. Yeah.
No, go ahead. The closer wasn't a big deal.
Right, it wasn't as big a deal.
Yeah.
I guess the only thing you could argue is the Hinkie Blue Jays closer might be more comfortable in safe situations because that was more of a thing.
Right.
But again, as far as lineups go, let's take a look here.
David Wells popping up as a reliever on that.
Right-handed David Wells, different guy, different one.
No,
wait a second. No. I'm looking at Dwayne Ward. Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Pre-98 Yankees.
Yes, that's true.
Was this like before he was well known, or was he?
Probably, yeah. He was still young in his career, yeah.
All right, so I think, let's see here. 70 Orioles, a lot of right-handed bats with one switch hitter.
Right.
A little more, let's see, 1, 2, 3 switch hitters in the Blue Jays lineup.
Yeah. More flexible Blue Jays lineup.
Definitely. You got Jeff Kent and Derek Bell coming off the bench here, who are good players in their own right. Kent's a future MVP.
But let's look at that. The names in that Oriole lineup just jump out at you. Boog Powell.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody knows who Boog Powell is. 35 home runs, 114 RBIs.
Yeah. Okay.
Davey Johnson, who we're going to see later on, was the manager of the 86 Mets, was a good ball player. Brooks Robinson, Hall of Famer. Frank Robinson, Hall of Famer. Paul Blair. I mean, these are guys that were... And you can't look at it that way because this is a matchup. But it's hard for me to believe that the Blue Jays pitching staff is going to shut those guys down for 4 games. I have an easier time believing that those 3 20-game winners would do that with the Blue Jays roster, with the exception of maybe Joe Carter and Dave Winfield. But again, Winfield was at the end of his career back then. So anyway, that's just my thoughts.
Yeah, I think this is even more of kind of a foregone conclusion than our previous matchup.
I think so.
I give the edge to the Orioles big time here. I can see a 4-1, maybe even a sweep of this World Series if things go right for them.
Right, if things go right. I see at least a 4-1. I agree with you. I think they take the first 2 in Baltimore pretty easily with their starting pitching. And then I think if the Blue Jays are lucky, they grab 1 maybe in Toronto, and it goes 4-1 at the worst, because I find it hard to believe that the Blue Jays are going to win 4 games and have to beat Jim Palmer, Mike Cuellar, and Dave McNally some combination of 4 times. I just don't see that happening.
I agree.
And then you look at guys like Brooks Robinson and Frank Robinson and Paul Blair. I mean, I just don't see it happening. So we're in agreement. The 70 Orioles advance.
Okay. I agree.
All right, next matchup. we have the number 3 seeded 1984 Detroit Tigers facing off against the 6 seed 2004 Boston Red Sox. Now, the 84 Tigers won 104 games, lost 58, first in the AL East. They swept the AL Championship Series 3-0 over the Kansas City Royals, and they nearly swept the World Series 4-1 over the San Diego Padres. In the 2004 Red Sox, that was obviously the famous curse-breaking team. Won 98 games, lost 64, finished second in the AL East that year, probably to the Yankees, I guess, right?
Right.
And they won the division, swept the divisional series 3-0 over the Anaheim Angels. Won the championship series in that, I'm sure you're getting into this, that tough 7-game battle, 4-3 over the Yankees. Came back from 3-0, right? 3-0.
Yeah.
And then they swept the World Series 4-0 over the St. Louis Cardinals.
Okay, this is obviously just like a bracket should be. When you get into your three versus
matchup.
Yeah, it's a little more even of a matchup, isn't it? Yeah. So I'll let you start this one.
All right, so let's see, pitching wise here. All right, so you got Jack Morris popping up again.
This was his pre-Blue Jay and pre-Twins era. Yeah.
Dan Petrie or Petrie?
Petrie.
Petrie. Milton Wilcox. Okay, those are 19, 18, 17 game winners that season.
Right.
All pretty good win totals there.
Right.
Red Sox, you got Kurt Schilling, Pedro Martinez, Tim Wakefield for your top 3. Schilling with 21 games that year.
Right.
Pedro still pretty a top level pitcher, not quite the dominance he was from like 98 to 2000. That Pedro. So you're still going to get good stuff out of him. Let's see here. Closing, so you got Willie Hernandez for the Tigers, Keith Falk for the Red Sox. Both had 32 saves that year.
They did. Yeah.
It's the exact same.
Right.
I think that. Yeah, I mean, I think the pitching could kind of hinge on what you got at Wakefield because if the knuckleball is really on that night, it's going to be hard to hit.
Right.
If it's just up there floating, they're going to crush it. So I think. Yeah, and if you can get a shutdown performance out of Pedro, like kind of a 2000 Pedro, and Wakefield's knuckleball's on, I give the pitching to the Red Sox. But it kind of depends on some factors there. Right.
I agree with that 100%. I think obviously this series would open up in Detroit, and I think if the Red Sox ended up losing the first 2 in Detroit, say, I think you got to go with Wakefield for your third starter. Yeah. But I think if they were to split, I think they'd go with Derek Lowe maybe as the third game starter and save the knuckleball guy for the fourth game. But he made a really good assessment of the pitching matchups. Let's look at the lineups. I mean, you look at the '84 Tigers. Names that stand out at you: Lou Whitaker, Alan Trammell, Howard Johnson. Ended up starting a series of hotels and rest. No, I'm just kidding. There, Howard Johnson, who ended up playing for the New York Mets in '86 when they won the World Series. Kirk Gibson and Darrell Evans. Darrell Evans ended up playing for the Boston Red Sox 2 years later in 1986. So those are some pretty good ball players right there. And you look at their lineups. I mean, Lance Parrish hit 33 home runs. Gibson hit 27. Chet Lemon hit 20. Yeah. Evans hit 16. You look at the Red Sox again. I mean, David Ortiz and Manny Ramirez. I mean, 40 home runs each. So that's a pretty stout lineup. And I think, gosh, I mean, I remember the '84 Tigers very well. They were a dominant baseball team. I think they got out to like a 19-1 start, if I'm not mistaken, something crazy like that, and just ended up plowing through that season. Only lost 1 game in the World Series, swept the championship series. The Red Sox were pretty dominant too. I mean, they won the division series in a sweep, won the World Series in a sweep, and then you can't, as much as you just can't take away what they did against the Yankees in the AL Championship Series. I mean,
theoretical sweep. They won 4 in a row.
They won 4 in a row. That's exactly right. But the way they did it was pretty amazing.
Could you make an argument though that Tigers lineup from top to bottom is a little more formidable? Whereas if you can take out Ortiz and Ramirez, there's not a lot of guys that can hurt you there other than those 2.
Yes.
Kind of more role player type guys. No, Bugger isn't going to hurt you.
No, I think you make an excellent point there. I think. Ortiz is a left-hander, Manny's a right-hander, so that plays into the Tigers' pitchers are all right-handers. So obviously the only guy you got to be careful with is Ortiz, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I say careful with. He's the matchup that you don't want a right-handed starter going up against in a late in the late innings.
And all the Red Sox pitchers are right-handers.
That's right. That's right. And you look at the Tigers lineup. They've got a couple. I think one switch hitter in there, and a lot of left-handed batters. Yeah. So, and their power hitters are mostly left-handed. So, yeah, I mean, gosh.
And I think it goes 7 games.
Yeah, I think this does go 7 games. I think this is a really tight matchup, and I don't know. I mean, I really don't know. Gosh, I don't know what to say. I mean, I think Jack Morris proved later on in his career, and I don't know why he wouldn't do it right now, that he could pitch you 3 games in the World Series on 3 days rest. Yeah. I don't know, but Schilling could do it.
In 01 with the Diamondbacks.
He did, yeah. Schilling did it as well. Gosh, I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah. I'm gonna say the Red Sox because I'm counting on Pedro giving at least 1 lights out performance, maybe 2, and Wakefield's knuckleball being on, and then Manny and Ortiz being able to do some damage. I'm gonna give it to the Red Sox.
Yeah, I don't know much.
Close 7 games.
I don't know much about the '84 Tigers, but looking at I don't know much about the pitching staff. But looking at the pitchers, it seems like the Red Sox have a better pitching staff. Is that? I mean, I know you already dissected. No, that's the thing. Jumps out at me is it seems like the Red Sox have better pitchers, but that's probably because I don't know much of anything about the '84 Tigers. So, and Kirk Gibson, was he? I looked up. He won the MVP. It looked like in '88. Maybe was he? What sticks out in my mind is the game, of course, where he hit that home run. And
that was '88.
He was still a little past his prime at that point, right?
Yeah, I was going to say.
This is more of his heyday.
'84 was more of his heyday, yeah.
I thought he won I thought it said he won the MVP in '88, but maybe not.
He might have won the MVP in '88, yeah. But, I mean, it still was past his prime, even though he won it.
He did, yeah. He was 6 in '84.
Yeah. So
he was he was actually really good. It's not just that one game that stands out.
Yeah. Right. No, he was a very good player. And Lance Parrish, the catcher, I mean, that was his career year: 33 home runs, 98 RBIs. And I think that Joseph makes a really good point there. I don't see anybody in the Tigers lineup that really scares me. Maybe outside of Gibson. Trammell was a pretty good hitter. But you're right. You look at the Red Sox lineup again. You can pitch around some guys, but Manny and Ortiz, Johnny Damon. I mean, we're overlooking him. I mean, the guy hit 20 home runs and batted .304. I don't know. I mean, I think I tend to maybe agree with you on that deal.
I could go either way, but I'm banking on the fact that Pedro and Wakefield are going to be on, and then the Red Sox win. So.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that. Yeah. I mean, okay. So Red Sox.
7 games.
Red Sox in 7. All right, so that takes care of that one. So our final matchup is which one now, Nathan?
Our final matchup in the American League is the 4-seeded 2009 New York Yankees versus the 5-seed 1977 New York Yankees. So 2 Yankees teams here. The 2009 Yankees won 103 games, lost 59, first in the AL East. They swept the divisional series 3-0 over the Minnesota Twins. They won the championship series 4-2 over the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim, and they won the World Series 4-2 over the Philadelphia Phillies. And they'll be facing off against their 1977 counterparts, who won 100 games, lost 62, first in the AL East. Again, no divisional series, but they won the championship series 3-2 over the Kansas City Orioles, and they won the World Series 4-2 over the Los Angeles Dodgers.
Okay. All right, so here we go. 2 Yankee teams from different eras.
Mr. October versus Mr. November.
That's right, Mr. October versus Mr. November. That's exactly right. Let's start with the pitching, like we've been doing. If you look at the Yankee staff in '77, Catfish Hunter was really towards the end of his career there. I mean, he wasn't even their number 1 starter. Don Gullett, that's an interesting story there. Don Gullett was a guy they picked up from the Reds. He was lights out for the Reds in 1976 when they beat the Yankees in the World Series. The Yankees picked him up, and he really didn't do a whole lot. I mean, he was 14-4, but never really panned out. Ron Guidry was really the guy that turned out to be their ace. In 1978, Ron Guidry won the Cy Young Award and went 25-3. So he was at the start of his dominance there. Won 16 games, 282, left-hander with a nasty curveball and a nasty slider. Mike Torres, very good pitcher, and then you got Ed Figueroa, who was also a good pitcher. But But if you look at those pitchers, there's really not anybody that you say this guy's lights out. He's going to win you this ball game, except maybe Guidry. Right. Okay, you look at the Yankee staff. Okay, Andy Pettitte is there again. Of course, at the end of his career, A.J. Burnett was a guy that was lights out during their playoff run. And then C.C. Sabathia was a guy that was in his first year with the Yankees, and that's why they brought him over there, and he was obviously the ace of that staff. Yeah. Closer, again, Sparky Lyle was a really good closer for the Yankees in '77, but he wasn't anything near what Mariano Rivera is. Yeah. So,
I think that was my first thought, too, is the '77 Yankees have a lot of good pitchers, but not someone you can really rely on, especially if you end up getting to like a decisive Game 7 or something like that. I'd much rather have Sabathia than any of those guys. And AJ Burnett's, you never really know what you're going to get out of him, but it could be a pretty dominant performance. And he was the guy who pitched a no-hitter with walking 9 guys or something. So he's kind of all over the place, but he is capable of dominant performances. I think that the Yankees 09 lineup is just ultimately too much for that staff, the 77 staff.
I agree with that. Yeah.
Not reading off any batting order here, but Posada, Teixeira, Cano, Jeter, A-Rod, Damon. Then you got Matsui. I think he won World Series MVP that year, right?
He did.
So
yeah.
How did that win more than one World Series? I feel like with that lineup, they should have won a couple.
Yeah,
that's a good. Well, if you remember, in 2010 they lost the AL Championship Series to the Rangers, and in 11 they lost it to the Rangers. So they were right there.
Yeah,
they just couldn't.
Wait, they lost to the Rangers both those years? Or?
Yeah. Oh. Yeah. The Rangers were in the World Series 2 years in a row.
Yeah.
And they beat the Yankees both times.
Who did they have that? You don't forget it. Who did they have that were beating the Yankees?
Josh Hamilton. Michael Young, Milton Bradley. They
had a good team.
They're not in the bracket.
But you're right. Nathan's exactly right. With that lineup and that team, they should have won more than one World Series. All right. That's beside the point.
And then you've got Jeter brings the clutch factor that nobody really brings on that 77 team. Now we said Mr. October, Reggie Jackson. That was more just the 3-homer game in the World Series. Jeter over and over, year after year, time and time again, proved his clutch in the playoffs.
The only guy that I would compare to Jeter a little bit on the 77 Yankees was Thurman Munson. He was their catcher. He was their captain. He was the guy that kind of got him going like Jeter did. But again, not to the same level, I don't think.
So, excuse me. And then you got in the 7-17, you got 3 guys with single-digit homers and under 50 RBIs. Yankees, you have nobody with the lowest amount of home runs. You had 13, Melky Cabrera.
Yeah,
and even he had 68 RBIs. Just an offensive force, that team.
Yeah, look at the home runs. Posada 22, Teixeira 39, Cano 25, A-Rod 30, Johnny Damon 24, Swisher 20. I mean, just a powerful lineup. I mean, it's hard to pitch around anybody that lineup.
Yeah, and the 09 Phillies had good pitching.
Yes, they did.
They had. I don't think Holiday was there yet, but they had Hamels. They had. Who am I missing here?
Well, just look at the 08 Phillies. I mean, if you look at the 08 Phillies, we should be pretty much...
The 09 Phillies had Pedro. Of course, he didn't have anything left at that point.
Had Pedro?
Yeah.
The 09 Phillies, Joe Blanton, Cole Hamels, J.A. Happ, Jamie Moyer, Cliff Lee.
Yeah. Cliff Lee, I forgot about Cliff Lee, yeah.
Chan Hope, those are relievers.
Right.
Pedro Martinez, Brett Myers, Tyler Walker.
Right. But, so, I give the edge to the 09 Yankees, maybe a 4-2, maybe even a 4-1. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think I would give the edge to the 09 Yankees, but I think it would be at least 4-2. And the reason I say that is I think, and this is an interesting matchup because it doesn't matter who. The games are all going to be in Yankee Stadium.
Well, different Yankee Stadium.
Different Yankee Stadium, though. That's right. That's a good point. Yeah. The game would start in the new Yankee Stadium, and we'd have to switch over to the old Yankee Stadium. But
which is how it should have been. They should have never tore it down. Have them side by side.
Right. But I think the 77 Yankees are a good enough scrappy ball club. They'd win too. So I go with you. I'll say the 09 Yankees in 6.
Okay.
All right. So that wraps up for the American League side of the bracket in the first round. So we'll switch over to the National League side now. And the first game is the 1-seed 1975 Cincinnati Reds versus the 8-seeded 1995 Atlanta Braves.
Okay.
The 75 Reds won 108 games, lost 54, first in the NL West. No divisional series. They swept the championship series 3-0 over the Pittsburgh Pirates. They won the World Series 4-3 over the Boston Red Sox. The 95 Braves won 90 games, lost 54, first in the NL East. They nearly swept the divisional series. They won 3-1 over the Colorado Rockies. Mm-hmm. They swept the championship series 4-0 over the Cincinnati Reds. And they won the World Series 4-2 over the Cleveland Indians.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so you want to start? Or?
Yeah, I'll be glad to start on this one.
I'll just say that we might have an upset in our hands here. I don't know. A case can be made.
I was thinking that before we even started the broadcast today, when I was looking over our sheets here, was that how did the Atlanta Braves of '95 end up the AC? We know why. I explained how we picked them. No, I know we. But that was the first thing that popped in my head, even though I knew why. But the thing that jumps out at me is the same thing that jumps out of the 70 Orioles. Look at that staff.
Yeah.
Greg Maddux, 19-2, 1.63 ERA. I mean, the guy was just lights out. I mean, the definition. Tom Glavine, he was a bulldog. I mean, the guy won 16 games, but he was hard to hit. John Smoltz, we know what he did. Steve Avery. I mean, Avery was not. He didn't have a good year record-wise, but he was a really good left-handed pitcher. Right. And Kent Mercker wasn't bad either. Without even getting into further analysis, which we will, I find it hard to believe that you're going to beat Greg Maddux, Tom Glavine, and John Smoltz some combination of 4 times. Yeah. And that's the same thing I said about that 70 Orioles staff. Yeah. So go ahead. You can take the next analysis.
Yeah, I agree there. That's what I was going to talk about first is the Braves pitching staff, and you said it. Looking at the Reds pitching staff, and you can maybe speak to some of these guys a little better than I can because you were there, as they say. You have Gary Nolan and Jack Billingham both winning 15 games that year, and then Fred Norman and Don Goulet. Goulet also won 15 games. Right. So some high win. And you got Pat Darcy and Clay Kirby. So some win totals there that are pretty good. Just it's not starting pitching, just not quite matching up with the Braves.
No, am I in the minority? Just have never heard of one of those guys.
No, probably not. I mean, you wouldn't expect you to hear those guys. They weren't big name guys. I mean, obviously I've heard of them and I know what they did. Gullet, as I said, was a guy that was the Reds. He was actually the Reds' best pitcher in '75 and in '76, right. And then the Yankees got him, and he didn't do a whole lot with the Yankees. But yeah, there wasn't really a lights out dominant staff when you look at it. It's hard. And then you look at the closers. Mark Wohlers for the Braves and Raleigh Eastwick for the Reds. But I think you have to look at the lineups, and this is where maybe the Reds start to balance the scales a little bit. I mean, that Reds lineup, Johnny Bench, Tony Perez, Joe Morgan, George Foster, and then Pete Rose. I mean, Pete Rose, Dave Concepcion. Yeah. I mean, Ken Griffey. I mean, senior, exactly. I mean, you look at that lineup, and again, some of these numbers for Ken Griffey, for example, or for Rose, I think these guys might have been injured during the season some because I find it hard to believe that Pete Rose only hit 7 home runs and only knocked out 74 runs. Yeah. Same with Griffey. But my point is that's a lineup that, if there's a lineup that can get to one of the Braves guys or some of those guys, it would be that one because you can't rest on that lineup. Yeah. Look at the Braves lineup. It doesn't really jump out at me. I mean, I know they had a great year, but you look at that team, Fred McGriff had a good year. Chipper Jones, Ryan Klesko. Klesko is the kind of guy that he didn't appear to me as be a kind of guy that was you could get him out. Is what I'm trying to say. David Justice, again.
Go to those Reds guys though. I'm looking at the stats here. Pete Rose never hit more than 20 home runs this seaseason. Yeah, and Griffey only hit more than 20 once. So
I probably misspoke there. Yeah, maybe no. I'm not.
Not misspoke, but
they weren't home run hitters. Yeah, they weren't home run hitters.
Well, I mean, do you think? But if you look at the matchups here, my opinion is that this Braves lineup has a better chance of getting to the Reds pitching.
Yes.
Even though you have Hall of Famers in the Reds lineup, some really good players.
Right.
If Maddox comes out in his games and is on, you're not going to hit him.
You're not going to beat Greg Maddux.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, you're not going to beat Greg. I think you just made the best point right there. Is that Greg Maddux is going to win at least 2 games in this series. Okay, Glavine and Smoltz are going to win probably the other 2. I find it hard to believe that.
Sweep?
No. I'm just saying of the 4 games that you have to win. So what do you say? I mean, what do you think? What are you thinking?
Yeah,
Braves in 7 or 6?
6 or 7. But I think the Braves win. As great as that Reds team was.
I think what happens, kind of like we talked about. I think the series opens in Cincinnati. I think Maddox wins game 1. I think the Reds maybe take game 2, and then you go back to Atlanta, and I think Smoltz and Maddox win their games. Maybe the Reds win 1. And then Maddox goes back or somebody goes back and wins game 6. I'd say 4-2.
Yeah, and that's like Nathan's point about the 09 Yankees. How did the Braves not win World Series?
Right.
They were there. 91, 92,
Well, they ran into the Yankees.
96, 99, yeah.
I've looked at just from the pitching stuff alone how they not win more World Series. Well, the Reds won. How many did they win in the Red? That was the part of the big red machine.
75
right?
and 76. Yeah.
So
they didn't win a lot. See, they had a lot of opportunity. They lost the 70 World Series to the Orioles. They lost the 72 World Series to the A's, and then they won 75-76. So they did win 2, but they had a 6-year run there of dominance.
All
right. So the Braves in an upset, 4-2.
All right. Next matchup, staying in continuing in the NL, the 2 seed 1986 New York Mets versus the 7 seed 2008 Philadelphia Phillies. The 86 Mets won 108 games, lost 54, first in the NL East. They won the championship series 4-2 over the Houston Astros, and they won the World Series 4-3 over the Boston Red Sox. In the 08 Phillies won 92 games that year, lost 70, first in the NL East. They only lost 3 total games in the postseason. They won the divisional series 3-1 over the Milwaukee Brewers, won the championship series 4-1 over the Los Angeles Dodgers, and they won the World Series 4-1 over the Tampa Bay Rays.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, I'll let you start this one.
Okay. My first thought is that, I never saw the 86 Mets play, but the 08 Phillies are a good team. So, we talked. I think we talked about the 09 Phillies pitching a while ago, but the 08 team had Cole Hamels, really good left-handed pitcher. Jamie Moore, who won 16 games that year at an advanced age for pitchers.
Mm-hmm.
He was over his exact age that year, but it was low to mid-40s, right?
He was 45.
45, yeah, won 16 games.
I remember that guy. He was old.
Yeah. And then you have the Mets pitching, which again, Dwight Gooden that year especially is better than anybody on the Philly staff.
Right.
Ron Darling, 15 games. Bob Ojeda, right?
Yeah, Bob Ojeda. 18
games. And Sid Fernandez, 16 games.
But look at the ERAs, though. That's kind of a telling story to me. Is that 3 of the 4 Mets' top 4 starters had under 3 ERAs.
Yeah.
The Phillies, you had 2 of their top 4 had 4.5 and 5.49.
And even I know we hadn't talked about relievers much, but Jesse Orosco, 81 innings pitched, 2.3 ERA.
Yeah, Orosco was lights out. I remember him very well. Even Roger McDowell was an interesting. He was a very good pitcher as well, Roger McDowell. And I don't know that this matters much because we haven't really talked about it in our other matchups. But you look at the teams they beat. The Houston Astros were a very formidable opponent. In fact, the Mets had to beat them in the game 6 that they clinched the series. The Mets, it went 16 innings. The Astros were a tough out. And the Red Sox, if you remember, well, you may not remember, but you probably know, the Red Sox won the first 2 games in New York in that series. And the Mets had to go to Boston and then won 2 out of 3, and then came back to New York and won 2 in a row. And then, of course, it was the
Bill Buckner?
Bill Buckner, thank you very much. Yeah. The Bill Buckner incident at first base, which allowed the Mets to win Game 6. My point is, the Mets were a battle-tested baseball team. The Phillies were a good baseball team. I'm not sure they were battle tested.
Yeah.
I mean, the Brewers, come on. The Brewers were the Brewers. And the Tampa Bay Rays, that was a fluke,
Yeah, well, a little bit.
I mean, come on.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember the Yankees had a bad year in 2008. In fact, they didn't make the playoffs.
Yeah.
But I think the team, it was a little bit of a fluke that year.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that matters any. And then when you look at the ERAs, I have to give the advantage to the Mets pitching.
I agree.
Look at the rosters, though. That's a different story. I mean,
not a lot of power in the Mets lineup.
Not a lot of power in the Mets lineup. That's exactly right. Gary Carter had 24 homers. Darryl Strawberry had 27. Keith Hernandez had 13. But the key there is Lenny Dykstra. I mean, Lenny Dykstra, nickname was Nails. I mean, the guy got on base. He just was able to get on base. Wally Backman, another guy that was a very good guy to get on base. It was a switch hitter. So while there wasn't a lot of power, the Mets had the lineup that were kind of like a gnat. I mean, they would gnaw at you, get guys on base, and then Strawberry or Carter or Hernandez would drive them in. So
yeah, I think that that lineup you just talked about with the Mets, I think maybe Cole Hamels has a good outing, but I think they get to Brett Myers, Kyle Kendrick,
yes,
even Jamie Moyer.
Yes,
I think they wear those guys down a little bit and get to the bullpen pretty early in some of those games.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Whereas Doc Gooden can shut this Phillies lineup down.
Yes,
and even you got Darling and Fernandez and Ojeda are gonna present a better effort against those guys than opposite.
And Sid Fernandez was that crafty left-hander. Like he wouldn't throw it really fast, but he would he had 4 or 5 different pitches, and he could move it around some. He was the kind of guy that after you faced Gooden, throwing the ball at 96, 97, 98, here comes Fernandez with that kind of weird type delivery. Right. So if I had to pick, I'd say I'd take the Mets in this series. I'm willing to go 7 games only because of what we talked about, but I still think the Mets win it.
I'm good with that. I agree. Yeah.
Okay. 7 games?
Yeah. That's 7.
Cool. All right, next matchup. The 3-seeded 2016 Chicago Cubs facing off against the 6-seed 2001 Arizona Diamondbacks. 2016 Cubs, again, that's the curse-breaking team.
Right.
Won 103 games, lost 58, first in the NL Central.
Mm-hmm.
They won the divisional series 3-1 over the San Francisco Giants, won the championship series 4-2 over the Los Angeles Dodgers, and they won the World Series 4-3 over the Cleveland Indians. That was my favorite World Series of my lifetime. That I remember watching. That was very enjoyable to see. The 2001 Diamondbacks. This was also a good World Series, though.
Mm-hmm.
But they won 90.
It wasn't.
Not for you, no. I guess I just remember the Cubs won a little more vividly. The Diamondbacks won 92 games, lost 70, first in the NL West. They won the divisional series 3-2 over the St. Louis Cardinals. They won the championship series 4-1 over the Atlanta Braves, and they won the World Series 4-3 over the New York Yankees. I think both of these World Series that these teams were involved in were 2 of the greatest World Series of all time, in my personal opinion.
I don't disagree with that one bit. And
none of that matters, but
no, I don't disagree with that. And I'll also add to that by saying that the 2001 World Series was probably, to me, the most memorable for a lot of reasons. Obviously, it was 9/11.
Oh, yeah.
It was coming off 9/11. So it was delayed a week because they had shut down the baseball season for a week. Mr. November, Derek Jeter, the clock turns midnight on November 1st, and Jeter hits a game-winning home run at 12:01 and becomes Mr. November. Just the Yankees were 3-time World Series champions in a row. The whole country was for the Yankees. I mean, believe it or not, at that time, with what had happened in New York, I think the whole country was on the Yankee side, with the exception of Arizona. So what the Diamondbacks did was really pretty phenomenal, if you ask me.
Yeah, I forget, when you look at all the backstory, I think that was probably the greatest World Series of all time. I mean,
when you look at all the other stuff.
Yeah, I forgot about the Yankees being so dominant during that time period, and then the whole 9/11, the team from New York that's trying to win the World Series. Yeah, that's. Anyways, continue.
Yeah. So
anyway, that's just the background.
Yeah. Pitching, I mean, Diamondbacks, Kurt Schilling and Randy Johnson. That's about as good as a 1-2 you're ever going to have. Right there.
It is.
I think, correct me from maybe Nathan looks up. Did they split the World Series MVP, or did one of them win it?
No, they split it.
Okay.
I think they split it.
Let me get back to you.
They shared it.
All right, we got our stats guy looking that up. Yeah, so after that, it kind of falls off a cliff.
Yes.
As far as their starters go, but
Yeah, they split it.
okay. And then in a 4-game series, you got. I mean, theoretically, your one guy can go 1-4-7, and then whoever the second guy can come out the bullpen in game 7 if you need him.
Well, and to back up your point there, if you look at that World Series, okay, the series opened in Arizona, and the Diamondbacks won the first 2 games of that series.
Yeah.
Johnson and Schilling.
Yeah.
They went back to New York, and the Yankees won all 3 in New York against Anderson, Ellis, Lopez. They beat Young Kim.
Did Schilling not start a game in New York?
He probably did, yeah, but they did get to him in New York, okay?
I can look that up.
But again, I think he had the lead. That was one of the games where they got to Byung-Hyun Kim late in the game. Okay.
Game 1 was Schilling. Wait a second. 2001. Game 1, Schilling won.
Right.
Yeah.
Game 2,
Johnson won.
Right.
Then Game 3, Yankees won 2-1. Clemens got the win.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Who was the losing pitcher?
Brian Anderson.
Right.
Rivera with the save. Game 4, Byung-Hyun Kim lost.
Right.
Miron Rivera with the win.
He lost Game 5 too, Young Kim, didn't he?
Game 5, Albie Lopez lost it.
Okay, he must have.
Sterling Hitchcock won.
Who started?
Who started Game 5?
Let me.
I want to say that Schilling probably started it, but
Probably did. But
I mean game 4.
Game 4, yeah.
Who started game 4?
All right, hold on a second. Let's see here. Kurt Schilling.
Yeah.
This says the Diamondbacks elected to bring back Kurt Schilling on 3 days rest.
Right. Okay.
And then, do you have another question about?
No, that was it.
Yeah.
That was it.
All right.
Anyway, the reason I asked that question and had Nathan look for that is because in this matchup, going to what we're talking about, is you'd probably have a similar situation, right? The series would open in Chicago. I think you'd have Schilling and Johnson, obviously, game 1 and 2. I think game 3, you'd probably go with Brian Anderson, and then game 4, depending upon what the series was like, you'd go with Schilling again if you needed him. But anyway, I think you have to give the edge to the Diamondbacks.
Yeah. I mean, the Cubs have good pitchers, a number of good pitchers.
They
Nobody
do.
that can match those 2 guys.
No, they don't. No.
John Lester, I mean, that year went 19-5 with a 2.44, but he's never somebody I felt that was dominant.
No.
Like he.
He cancer, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
Before that?
Right.
Before that, yeah.
I feel like he's always a guy you can get to, though. I don't know.
Jake Arrieta was okay.
Yeah.
But let's look at the lineups real quick.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, if you look at the guy, I mean, Schilling and Johnson faced a pretty formidable Yankee lineup, right? So let's look at that first. But here you got Chris Bryant hit 39 home runs, Rizzo hit 32, Addison Russell hit 21. But again, if you look at that lineup, the only guys, like we talked about, that you have to be really careful with are Rizzo and Bryant. I mean, the other guys are good players. Don't get me wrong, but they're not guys that are gonna kill you every game. You know, they're not overpowering type guys.
None of those guys are hitting Randy Johnson.
No, I don't see that happening.
And of course, Nathan remembers we watched it. I mean, the Indians had that game 1.
Yeah.
A couple different times.
Did you talk about game 7?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the Cubs obviously
It
pulled
kept
out.
going back and forth.
Yeah.
Like they'd go up, and Cubs would go.
Right.
They just
so
I think that was just kind of like that team was just their year. Everything kind of fell into place perfectly. It wasn't like they were a dominant team.
so the Diamondbacks lineup. Luis Gonzalez had his career year that year.
Yeah.
57.
The guy was. I'm just speculating here, but the guy was juicing up that season. I mean, come on. 57 home runs, you kidding me? Look, I'm about to look up what he
Randy
did.
Sanders with 33 homers. So those are your 2 power guys.
Mark Grace was a
good hitter.
pretty solid hitter.
Yeah.
I remember Mark Grace pretty well.
Matt Williams.
Luis Gonzalez here. I'm just going to read you some of his home run totals. Before 96, it was pretty much non-existent. So 96, continuing down. 15, 10, 23, 26, 31, 57, 28, 26, 17, 24. Come on.
So he was juicing, okay.
Okay. So,
Matt Williams was a pretty good ball player. Really the Diamondback lineup doesn't really jump out at me a lot either. You know, I mean, so that's the interesting thing about this is that you don't really see either lineup scaring you that much. And you look at Gonzalez being a left-handed hitter. So you'd obviously want to, and the Cubs have mostly right-handed pitchers, so that would I'd have to give the edge to the Diamondbacks, and the only reason I would the main reason is assuming Curt Schilling and Randy Johnson are themselves. They're going to win. They're going to win at least 3 of the 4, maybe all 4.
I agree,
but
I agree. Again, this could be a 7-gamer. I could see that.
I could see that as well. I could see that being a 7-gamer. I say the Diamondbacks in 7. What do you say?
Yeah, I agree with that.
All right,
great. All right. Last game of the first round here, we have the 4-seeded 2012 San Francisco Giants facing off against the 5th seed 2019 Washington Nationals.
Okay.
The 2012 Giants won 94 games, lost 68, first in the NL West. They won the divisional series that season 3-2 over the Cincinnati Reds. They won the championship series 4-3 over the St. Louis Cardinals. And they won the World Series. They swept it 4-0 over the Detroit Tigers. Mm-hmm. The 2019 Nationals won 93 games that season, lost 69, second in the NL East. They had to play the wild card game, so they beat the Milwaukee Brewers in that game. They won the divisional series 3-2 over the Los Angeles Dodgers,
who were the number 1 seed.
Yeah, they won the championship series. They swept that 4-0 over the St. Louis Cardinals, and then they won the World Series in 7 games, 4-3 over the Houston Astros.
Right, and as everybody knows, all 4 of those wins came in Houston.
Yeah.
And Joseph and I remember we were sitting at the Caesars Sportsbook watching one of those games in Washington, and just amazed that they couldn't win a game.
The Joe Ross start when Scherzer didn't have to go.
I would just add my 2 cents for each start. I think it's I think the national team. It's more their whole playoff stretch was impressive because they had to play that wild card game, which could go either way. And then the World Series, they played a team that knew what pitches were coming, and they still won.
Right.
Yeah,
so just leave it at that.
Right. I think that's an excellent point.
Well, this is interesting because we've talked a lot about pitching staffs here, which is appropriate because that's the key in the postseason. But you look at this matchup, you have the Nationals with their 2 big guns, Strasburg and Scherzer, but the Giants have Kane and Bumgarner.
Right.
Which is very similar. So they almost cancel each other out there.
Lincecum. Don't forget
I was going to say, that was a little bit past his Cy Young days, but still incapable of a good performance.
Maybe Zito's still pretty good.
Zito won 15 games that year.
Yeah.
So if you say the two aces cancel each other out, the Giants have better 3rd and 4th starters, I think. Mm-hmm. So
I guess they do, but Anibal Sanchez and Patrick Corbin were no slouch.
Yeah.
I think you have to look at the relief pitchers here a little bit. Sergio Romo
could be a good closer.
He ended up being a good closer. Mm-hmm. He actually closed a lot of games, and nowadays he's been used as that. What do they call that again? The guy that you start that's not the real starter.
The opener.
The opener. Sergio Romo's been one of those in recent years. Yeah, he still plays. Yeah. So I think the pitching staffs, I think they're so equal when you look at them. I think Scherzer and Strasburg were maybe a little more dominant from a strikeout standpoint, but gosh, Bumgarner was in his prime back then. Kane.
Yeah, and some of the relieving ERAs really favor the Giants.
Yeah, they do.
3 guys under a 3.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
The Nationals guys look like they get hit around a little more.
Yeah, they do. And then you look at the lineups. Let's look at the lineups. This is where I think the Nationals get a big favor.
I agree.
You look at the Nationals lineup. Juan Soto and Anthony Rendon, 34 homers each. Both over 100 RBIs. You got Trey Turner, Adam Eaton. You had Suzuki coming off the bench. You had Zimmerman, who was probably coming off the bench. He'd started a lot of games at first base. I think the Washington Nationals lineup is way better than the lineup I'm looking at for the Giants, with the exception of maybe Buster Posey.
Yeah, he had a good year that year.
He had a really good year.
336, 24 homers, and then you got some guys. Not that impressive.
No.
Just
Melky
guys.
Cabrera was at the end of his career. Angel Pagan, he was just a guy. Hunter Pence,
Cabrera is, I wouldn't say it's the end of his career there. He's
maybe not the end of his career,
plays,
but he was starting to fade a little
Pablo
bit.
Sandoval was They had the number 2 probably, right? Was that?
Yeah.
Was that? He was real big at one point in time.
That was it. He might have won World Series MVP that year. You have to look that up, maybe. But
I think my assessment would be one that you used once before. Yeah. Is that I don't see the Giants lineup beating Strasburg or Scherzer. Uh-huh. I see the Nationals lineup being able to get to one of those starters.
Well, we saw. I mean, Verlander and Greinke and
Garrett Cole.
Yeah, so the Nationals proved they can get the guys like that.
I got to go with the Nationals.
Yeah,
7 games.
Yeah, 7 games feels appropriate. Yeah, I don't have a problem with that.
Nice. That's it. First round.
And the Giants would not know what pitches are coming this year.
They would.
That's true.
Never hit him.
That's true. That's true. So we're ready for our next round. Remember, as I said, now you're listening to this on a Monday. Our next round will be just 3 days later on Thursday. So make sure you listen to that and go to our Twitter account at PressBoxPod to look at the bracket. So here's how it ends up in the National League in the quarterfinals. In the quarterfinal round, we will have the 8th seed 1995 Braves facing off against the 5th seed 2019 Washington Nationals, and we have the number 2 seed 1986 New York Mets facing off against the number 6 seed 2001 Arizona Diamondbacks. So a few upsets there in the National League. In the American League, we almost held serve on seeding. We'll have the number 1 seed 1998 Yankees taking on the number 4 seed 2009 Yankees. And then we'll have the number 2 seed 1970 Baltimore Orioles facing off the number 6 seed 2004 Boston Red Sox. So pretty well goes along with the seeding there. And I think what do you think, Joseph? I think that matches up. When you look at the wins, a lot of those American League teams had 100 wins or more and were dominant teams. The National League, we didn't seem like a lot of them were dominant. You know what I'm trying to say? They were more equal, those 8 teams.
Right, I agree. I agree. The Yankees match will be interesting. Some of the same players overlapping there.
Isn't it, though? Yeah, the 09 Yankees against
you have to say, was Jeter better in 98 or not?
Well, that's something we'll discuss. And that'll do it for this episode. Like you said, stay tuned to this series. It's going to be something we're really excited about. And we'll see you in a few days again on the PressBox Podcast.